What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters. I'm David Wilson, and today we're going to talk about how to use the GNU Guix package manager to do your everyday package management tasks. So in the last video, I showed you how you can install the GNU Guix package manager as an alternative package manager on your existing Linux distribution, something they call a foreign distribution installation. But I didn't go into much detail about how you would use it on a day-to-day basis. We just talked about how to get it set up and how to do the very basic steps to verify that the package manager is working correctly. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Guix for your day-to-day package management needs and show you one of the really useful things that it can do that most other package managers can't. So that's part of the reasons why we want to use Guix, is because it's got a lot of really useful and interesting functionality that is unique to Guix and to package managers like Nix, but you don't really get for the typical package managers in your mainstream Linux distributions. So what I cover today will apply to both using Guix as a package manager in your own Linux distribution, as well as using Guix, the full system distribution, whenever you're using it that way, when we finally talk about how to set that up. By the end of this video, you'll know how to install and update the packages that you use on a daily basis, and more importantly, how you can deal with any package updates that are going to cause your system problems, which doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while you'll install an update to a package that you use and it causes some issue with your system. So Guix has a very nice way that you can deal with that problem whenever it happens. All right, first of all, whenever you start using Guix, you really won't know what packages are available, so you'll have to have some way to search for the packages that are available. Many package managers from other distributions will have a nice graphical user interface where you can see a package listing and search for things that you want or see categories, etc. By default, Guix doesn't really have that. It has a search command that you can use to search for packages with particular terms. There is some user interface that you can install in Emacs, and I think there may be other graphical tools that you can install separately that will show you a listing of packages from Guix. But when you get started, when you have nothing set up yet and you don't really know what to expect with Guix, the Guix search command is what you'll be using to find the packages that you might want to use. So whenever you invoke this Guix search command, you pass it a list of search terms, each of which can be a regular expression. So if you know anything about regular expressions, you can get pretty specific about the pattern that you're looking for anything that you're searching for in this case. And the results that get returned from the Guix search command have to include all of the terms. So it's like basically it filters the results down even further. So you could search for just Emacs, but if you wanted to find things that related to org mode and Emacs, you could search for both of those terms to find packages that only mention those two terms. So that can be very useful for refining your search if many results are returned, because the way that this search works is that it's searching not only the name of the package, but it's also searching the description and maybe some of the other fields in the package metadata. So you'll get back a lot more results than you expect if you search for Emacs. You're going to get probably 100 packages at least. So let's just really quickly run a search. I'll run the search that we mentioned above here, Guix search Emacs org mode. And it will give us a result set that has quite a few things here, because there's a lot of packages that are related to both Emacs and org mode. But it's a good starting point to find out what's available here. So if we look at this one entry here in this result list, I guess you could say, there are key value pairs written out to the command line for name, version, outputs, which systems it applies to, which dependencies it may have. Also the location in the Guix package sources, where you can look up the actual package definition and read it if you wanted to find out more about how the package gets installed. And the other just general metadata about the packages themselves. So if you want to learn more about a package, it's a good way to figure that information out just by using Guix search to find the package you're looking for. And then you can also, like I said, use regular expressions. So in this case, I'm going to use a regular expression to search for Emacs and anything that's either evil or vim. So it has to have both of these things in the results. So if I were to search for that now, Guix search Emacs, And then for the regular expressions, typically you want to put those in quotation marks because otherwise the syntax may conflict with something else in your shell. So I'm going to search for evil or vim here. And then when we get the results back, we'll see results that have either evil or vim. So this line here specifically has Emacs and vim. So you can tell that it is working the way that we expect it to. And then there's also other evil results in this as well. And because Emacs uses regular expressions for searching the names and descriptions of packages, your searches might return a lot more packages that aren't what you're looking for. So you can try to use some more of the more specific regular expression syntax to help with that if you want to. So in this case, I can search for SQLite. So if I search for Guix search SQLite, the database software, we'll see there's quite a lot of results that come back. And in fact, we can do a word count -L to get the number of lines that are returned in the search. That's 792 lines. So now if I search for Guix search and I use the regular expression characters for the beginning and end of lines, so I'm basically telling it I want to find the term SQLite where it's at basically the only thing in the line of text that's being searched. And if I do the same thing, the WC-L, oh, invalid variable reference. I forgot to put this in quotation marks. So just again, a little bit of proof here that you need that. Jump ahead a little bit here. There we go. Now we receive 13 lines as a result, and I can just show you what the results are for that. So now we see that we get SQLite only, and it says it's version 3.31.1 here. So that shows you that it can be a useful way to find only what you're looking for in this case, because sometimes you get a lot of results back. I also have links to the Guix manual for certain things, so just check these if you want to get more information about anything we cover today. Okay, so once you finally found a package that you'd like to install, you can use the Guix install command to install it. This command will install the specified package or list of packages. You can pass multiple packages to the install command, and it will put them in your default user profile. We haven't talked about profiles at all yet, but it's something I'll get to in a future video. But for now, let's just assume that a profile, I think my audio is clipping. I'm sorry if that's the case. A user profile is basically just a list of packages that you have set up for your user account. And the different users on the system all have their own profile, so they can have their own separate set of packages that are installed. Another interesting feature of Guix that we'll cover at some point in the future. So let's see, we could try to install both of these packages right now. So let me just grab this command and I'll paste it in here. So we're gonna try to install Emacs Evil and Emacs Org Rome. Let's see if this causes problems for me here. So it's telling me that the following packages will be installed. It also tells me something interesting here, that my Guix system is quite out of date. Once this finishes, I'll show you what it said. So it's going through a bunch of installation, and it will install all the dependencies of the packages that I asked for. So in this case, there's a few other packages that I didn't ask for that are just dependencies of the things that I installed. And it did tell me here that my Guix installation is 43 days old. I don't use this computer very frequently. This is actually my streaming machine, so this is why it tells me that. But it is pretty helpful whenever you try to install something. It says that you need to update stuff. So it told us that these packages are being installed. There's a lot of other information being written out here. And at the end, it does some things where it says it's building certain parts of the system again. So it's basically updating your profile with a bunch of different metadata that has to be brought together to make your packages usable. So now those packages are installed. Now, one thing that may surprise you, you may or may not have noticed it just now, is that I did not have to use the sudo command to become a super user to install these packages. That's because Guix allows every user of the system to have their own independent set of packages installed. So the Guix installation at the system level, either through having the full Guix distribution or through installing it in your distribution and setting up the Guix build daemon, basically, they will allow every user to install packages, but it really gets handed off in the background to the daemon, the build daemon, and then it gets installed on the user's behalf. So you don't have to be running this command as super user to install these things. In fact, if you run it as super user, these packages will get installed for the root user and not for you. So definitely don't use sudo whenever you are installing Guix packages for yourself, for your own purposes. So in a future video, I'll explain more about how Guix is actually installing packages and how per user profiles work. So if a particular package provides multiple versions, which can be the case for certain packages that either maybe there's compatibility issues, or maybe there's two different major version lines that people are using frequently, like there's Guile 2 and Guile 3 that are both being used by various things in the Guix system. You might want to install one or the other version specifically, and there's a specific syntax you can use for installing packages for that. So in this case, it's the package name @version syntax. So for example, if I wanted to install that version of SQLite that I had, I can just be explicit and say SQLite at 3.31.1. However, this only applies to a package that has multiple versions present as Guix package definitions, and not all packages have that. I would say that most packages don't have that. So whatever package that is the current version of the package in Guix will be the one that you get. And if it's a multi-version package, then you have to, when you install just the name of the package, it will give you the latest one, and then, or whichever one is defined as the latest one in the Guix package definition. And then you'll have to explicitly install a different version if you want. So we'll see an example of that in a little bit, actually. So some packages may have multiple outputs that you can install using the using the package :output syntax. And an output is a different formulation of a package for a different purpose. And typically what you'll see is there's going to be an output, which is the typical use case for a package. So for a library like GTK+, it would just be the library files for GTK+. There can also be a bin output, bin, like binary. And this is for packages that don't normally expose executables, but maybe you want to expose an executable for some reason. And in the case of GTK+, there is a bin output. And I use that because there's a command there that I use for launching applications. So sometimes you will need to actually use this if you want. Sometimes there's also doc outputs that will install documentation that doesn't normally get installed by default. So normally you don't have to think about this, but in some cases, you might have to go look and see what outputs are available for a package and install those explicitly if the things you're looking for from a package are not available when you install the default output. So like I mentioned, GTK+ has this bin output. So let's actually try that really quickly. If I think I've already got GTK+ bin installed, so this may not be a very good example, but I can install Guix install GTK+. You know, yeah, let's just do it this way. So if I do install GTK+, let's see what it tells me. So it's going to tell me it's going to do certain things. It doesn't really do any extra activity here because I've already got this installed in a different profile, so it doesn't have to pull anything down, but it is trying to do the build for me. And I might be able to tell by looking at the profile folder. This may be a little bit of esoteric Guix stuff for now, but let's just see what it does. So I'm going to look into my Guix profile and my bin folder, and I'm looking for a program called GTK launch. Let's see, I can just do this, GTK. Yeah, so there's no GTK launch here right now, and I think that that's because it only shows up if you install the bin output. So now what I'm going to do is use the same command I used before, Guix install GTK+, but I'm going to add this :bin at the end, and now we're going to see whether that will install that GTK launch command that I'm looking for in my profiles bin folder. Takes a little bit more time this time because I think we're building some extra information, but that should finish in just 1 second. And what you're seeing when all this happens is that not only does Guix just install the files that are necessary for a given package, it's also building a lot of stuff behind the scenes that gets used and loaded into your system whenever you log in. Basically, is what is called the profile. All right, so now it says the profile has been updated. And if we were to go back and try to list this GTK launch, now there's a whole bunch of GTK commands, including GTK launch like I looked for before. So it's just something to keep in mind that sometimes there's going to be packages that have different outputs, and you may have to try to install those for the programs or components that you're looking for. Just something to keep in mind. I think 90% of the time this is not a problem, but there will be that 10% of the time where you might have to actually look into it. All right, so there's another little bit of the manual talking about packages with outputs, so definitely consult that if you want more information about this topic. Okay, so now after you have installed a few packages, you probably will want to upgrade them at some point. But before you can upgrade a package, you first have to sync the latest package definitions from the main Guix repository and any other package sources that you've configured in your Guix setup. You can use the following command to do this, and it's Guix pull. It probably reminds you of git pull, and that there's a reason for that. So let me just run Guix pull, not git pull. Now, this may take some time, so I'm going to start running the command, and I'll tell you what it's doing. And then I might have to cut the video a little bit to skip ahead. But you can see that it's telling us that it's updating these channels. So I have a few different channels of Guix packages installed. I have the main Guix Git repository, which is the main repo for this project. And I also have 3 other repositories that are being consulted here. So this Guix pull command is looking at the package sources that I have set up that are called channels. We'll talk about that in another video. They're basically Git repositories that now we can pull commits from. We can basically pull to the latest version of whatever's in those repositories to get the latest package definitions. Now, it doesn't always pull the latest commits from the repositories because it depends on how you have your package sources set up. You may actually have it set so that it only pulls up to a given commit or a given branch or something. We'll talk about that in another video also, but I just wanted to let you know that it's not always the case that you're going to get the latest stuff from the repository. You can control that completely however you want. Once these things get pulled down, Guix has to then go build all these new package definitions that it pulled down so that they're available to be installed, because all of Guix package definitions are actually code. They're not just text. They're not metadata in a text file. It's actually real code that has to be compiled so that it can then be used. So this whole process is basically just pulling down all of this information and then preparing it so that it can be used for installing packages. So this may take a little bit of time, so we're going to just make a little shortcut in the video here, and then whenever it's finished, I'll come back and explain to you what we need to do next for upgrading packages. Okay, seems to be done now, and what we're going to do is go take a look at the output from this command so we can see what happened. I think that took probably around 9 or 10 minutes for me, but that's because it's been a while since I've updated and there's a lot of things that needed to be rebuilt in the package repository. But let's just take a look at what happened. So I'm going to scroll back up here to the top, and we already saw these updating channel bits here. Another thing that we see here is it authenticated the channel Guix, and what that means is that for every commit that was made to the Guix repository, it checked all those commits to make sure that these commits were signed with known GPG keys of authors of things in the Guix repository. And that's important because it gives you some level of assurance that there's no malicious commits being added to the repository, and you can make sure that there's sort of a chain of knowledge of who committed to the repository over time. So the main Guix repository has this functionality turned on, and maybe some other package sources that you'll use will have it as well. That's just another thing that Guix does to try to protect users and make sure that users' privacy and freedom is protected. So it also says that we're building from these channels. So all the channels that we have pulled down, we see what the commit hash is for all of them, and it tells us that it's going to build them. So like I said before, it's actually building the package definitions to be used later. And it's doing another thing saying that it's updating substitutes. So a substitute is a pre-built package for something that is in Guix. And these are typically available on the main Guix package repository, but not necessarily on other repositories because it requires that there is a build server that's building these packages and making them available to download. So it's not really common that you see a substitute server for third-party package sources, but at least for the main Guix source, there is one, which is really helpful because it means you don't have to compile all the source for the programs that you use in most cases. So now it says that it's building the modules for these things. A lot of the stuff I don't know in detail yet, but we are going to figure it out and talk about it in more detail in later videos. So we're just going to sort of scan over this right now to see if we can understand what's going on. It's downloading some more packages here. These are probably things that are related to the Guix command itself, because what actually happens is when you use Guix pull, it actually will pull down the latest code of Guix itself and recompile the Guix command so that you have access to any new commands or any new code that it comes as part of it. So it's kind of an interesting feature of Guix that when you pull from the main repo, you're getting a new Guix every time. So we're going to see a lot more substitute downloads, a lot more packages being installed. And then eventually we're going to get to the point where it starts trying to build some code for packages. And then we will finally get to the point where it is going to build a derivation. So this is the point where it starts building all the packages and all the components of Guix so that they can be used for installing packages later. It also builds derivations for the other repositories that you use. I use this flat repository, the non-Guix repository, and my own personal channel X repository. So you can see that it's making derivations for all of those, and we'll also talk about what a derivation is at a later video. So when you finally get to the end of it, there's a lot more little building log messages here for all these things. And then you will finally see new in this revision, and it tells us there are 331 new packages and 857 upgraded packages. This is very useful, a very useful feature of Guix pull, where basically anytime you pull, it's going to tell you what things have changed since the last time that you pulled. It's a really great way to learn about new packages that are being added to Guix, and also ones that you use that are being updated, so you'll know which ones you should expect to be updated. Now, it doesn't tell you everything. You can see there's a little ellipsis character at the end of both of these lines, and it's because sometimes there's so many that they won't just write them all out. So what you need to do is run this Guix pull -- news command to see all the news. So I'm going to run that right now, Guix pull -- news. And this will give me a full listing of everything that's changed. And you can see there's quite a lot. A lot of things have changed. There's also some news about Guix itself that's included here. Anytime there are security issues in Guix that are found and fixed, or maybe changes to how Guix itself works, you'll often see news articles like this printed out to you in the Guix pull news output. Here you'll see there's a ton of packages here. A lot of times you see so many because there are like Rust packages or Python packages that are being included into the Guix repositories, so you'll see a lot of added noise because of that. So if you're looking for particular things that you care about, you might have to kind of read very closely in all of these. Obviously, if you just try to update your packages, you'll see the things that are being updated, but I kind of like to scan through this list because it's interesting to see what things are being added. So I think there's one in here I know of that's been updated that's important. Let's see, where is it? I don't see it listed here, but I know it has been updated, so maybe we'll see it in a... Oh, no, it's actually in the upgrade list. I'm looking for SQLite. Yeah, so SQLite itself has been updated. Yeah, right here, 3.32.3. So we know that we have an update to SQLite that we're looking for, and I'm going to try to upgrade that in a second. Also, there's this whole list of new packages, so you can see that there's a lot of Emacs packages here, and if you are interested in using Guix as your package manager for Emacs, which we'll cover in yet another video, you definitely want to keep an eye out for new Emacs packages that are being added to Guix, because you'll figure out new things that you might not have known about that are Guix or Emacs packages, and you can give them a try by installing them using Guix. All right, so now that we have that, let's jump back to our notes, and what we'll do is upgrade a package. Now, you can upgrade all of the packages that you have installed in your user profile just by using the Guix upgrade command. I'm not going to do that right now because I would rather just upgrade one package, and that's the SQLite package. So I'll jump back to the shell, and I will run Guix upgrade SQLite. And now you'll see that it's going to upgrade that from the version I currently have in my profile to the new version that is available. And it's going to go through the process of downloading the substitute for this package, because there should be one available. And then it will finish by rebuilding my current profile to include that new version of the SQLite package. We'll see how long this takes. I might have to do another cut just because this may take a moment for it to finally get everything together and prepare to install it. So we'll give it a second and see what happens. Okay, it looks like the installation finally completed. It looks like it had to install a bunch of dependencies that are a little bit surprising in this case, because I'm just installing SQLite, but it's installing a lot of other things related to Wayland and GTK. I'm not exactly sure why those are related, but there must be some reason. But we can now see that we have the latest version of SQLite installed. Let's try this. Guix package list installed. So now we have SQLite 3.32.3, so that's great. We know that we now have that latest version there. So we've upgraded that package, and we could also easily upgrade all of our other packages just by using this Guix upgrade command. Note that will take some time if you haven't updated for a while, because there's a lot of sort of bookkeeping that has to be done behind the scenes and a lot of dependency calculation. But typically, if you keep your system up to date, these things don't take very long. All right, so you just saw me do this, but I'm going to show you how to do it in a more structured way. To see a list of all the packages that you have installed on your system, you can run this command. It's geeks package -- list installed. Now, I should mention that the geeks package command is actually the main command that's being used for all package operations. Commands like geeks install are actually deferring to Guix package under the covers. So if you want to use a command that can do everything, then you should look into Guix package, because you can do all the kind of operations for packages just using that. And these other commands like Guix install are just meant to be a nicer interface to things that you would commonly want to do. So in this case, we're going to use Guix package list install, because I think that's the only way that you can do this with the Guix commands. So Guix package -- list installed. And it's basically the same output we just got, but the output just lists you all the packages that you have installed in this profile, in your default user profile, and the version of the package that's installed, the output type that was installed. So if we go down to GTK, we can see that we have both out and bin here, because we installed that bin output before. And also it has a link to the location in the store, the Guix package store, where the actual package files live. I'm not going to go into why that's the case right now, why they have these crazy file paths. We'll talk about that later, but this is how Guix is able to do immutable functional package management, basically, because it puts all of your package files in these weirdly named folder paths so that they are unique from each other, or separated from each other. So yeah, you're able to basically just see all the packages that you have installed and what versions are there. So that can be useful if you forgot what you have installed, or maybe you just want to see what versions of things you have installed. And next, we're going to talk about removing packages. So at some point, you're probably going to want to remove a package that you've installed. So you can very easily just use the Guix remove command. So I'm going to type in Guix remove SQLite. And what that will do is just take that package out of your profile. It won't take very long, because all it does is basically remove it from your profile and then rebuild your profile so that it doesn't include that package any longer. The thing you should know about this, though, is that it doesn't actually remove the package from your system, only from your profile. Since there could be other Guix profiles or even generations of profiles on your system, Guix does not delete packages that you remove, because there's other places where they might be used. So we can verify this by installing SQLite again and see that it actually doesn't re-download anything. So if I say Guix install SQLite, it will basically just complete almost immediately, because it's just going to do the same thing again. It literally just says, oh, okay, we already have that, so we're just going to set your profile back up. This may be a little bit unnerving to some people, because you're probably thinking, well, if I remove a package, I don't want to have those files sitting around on my machine anymore. It seems like it's kind of a waste of space. And yeah, I agree with you. However, there's a reason for this. We'll cover it in another video about how multiple profiles work and how generations really work under the covers. But for now, just know that if you really want to get rid of all the unused packages that are on your system, you would have to use a command called geexgc, basically like garbage collection. And that will go and delete all unused packages and profiles and generations and a lot of other stuff. But it's kind of out of scope for this video, so we won't talk about it just yet, but we will talk about it later. And that's basically the command that you're going to use to keep your system clean after you've been installing package updates or system updates, etc. It's very easy to use, so it's not really a problem to do that occasionally, basically. All right, so now we're going to talk about one of the more interesting aspects of Guix. One of the really great features it has is the ability to roll back to a previous configuration if something you do breaks your system, or if you just install a package update and that program doesn't work right anymore. The package manager can even do this for the packages that you've installed, not just for your configuration. So if you use Guix system, a big thing would be to roll back your configuration if your configuration is broken, but you can even do it at the level of individual at the level of your profile, let's say. So basically, you can roll back your profile to a previous version before you installed or updated some package. So imagine that you updated to the latest version of a program, and for some reason it's got some bug where it crashes constantly every time you try to start it. Instead of just removing it and trying to avoid using it, you can roll back that package operation, the upgrade operation, using the following command, Guix package -- roll -back. So it's Guix package rollback, basically. So let's just run that really quickly and see what it does. So I'm going to run Guix package -- roll --back. And the last thing we did was install SQLite. So what this should do is undo that installation of SQLite that we just did. So all it's going to tell us is that it switched from generation 46 to 45. And what that means is that each time you make a change to your profile, either installing a package, upgrading a package, or removing a package, it creates something called a generation. And this is just like a new instance of your profile after some operation was applied to it. So Guix keeps your previous generations of your profiles so that you can roll back to the previous generation in case the new generation is wrong somehow, or maybe you just don't want to use it. Maybe you try to install a package and you didn't like it, so you roll back to a previous generation. So the rollback parameter to the Guix package command just provides you with an easy way to roll back to the previous generation. However, there is a way to roll back to any generation of your profile. So if you want to take a look at what generations you have in your profile, you can run the Guix package --list-generations parameter. And this is going to tell you a lot of things. It's going to tell you basically what operations were applied to your profile every time you ran a command in Guix. So we can see that generation 46, which was the one we just rolled back from, now we're on 45. So if generation 46, excuse me, added SQLite package, it says what version that it added and which location it is in the store. 45 was removing SQLite, because if you remember, we just removed it before we reinstalled it. And before that, there was an operation where we removed the old version of SQLite and added a new version of SQLite, so that upgrade operation. So basically, for any operation you do, and we can see that where we installed GTK bin and GTK plus out, and the other two packages that I installed earlier in the stream. So you basically can see when it was that these generations were created and what happened. It's a very nice way to be able to tell what is going on in your system, or what you've done basically in your system. So now that you have listed those generations, you can see that each generation has an ID. So this is generation 46, and every one of them will have its own ID to identify it. If you want to switch to one of those generations, you can use the Guix package --switch generation parameter to tell it exactly which generation you want to go to. So let's see. Let's go back before I installed that GTK plus bin package. So let's jump back to generation 42. I'll run Guix package --switch generation equals what was it? 42, right? 42 is a great number. So we're gonna run to switch generation 42, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go look back in my bin folder for my Guix profile to see if those GTK commands are there. So we'll look at Guix profile /bin, and we're gonna look for GTK. There's nothing there. So if I look for GTK /star, there's nothing there for GTK. If I jump back to the future, basically, if I go back, or if I go forward in time, back to generation number 46, then if I go try to search for the GTK commands, they're back. So what's happening here is every time you update your profile or you switch to a different generation, that profile folder is going to be updated with all of the things that are supposed to be available at the time of that generation. And this is how you're able to do rollbacks, basically. Your folder where all of your programs are installed from Guix is going to be updated to contain whatever's supposed to be there at that point in time. So as you saw, we can not only go backwards, but we can go forwards again after we've gone backwards. So you can do this arbitrarily. It doesn't really matter. You know, you're not destroying the new generations whenever you roll back. They're still there. You can go forward to them. And that's why I was saying before that when you uninstall a package, it doesn't go away from your system because there may be generations that still actually reference that package. So this is just something that's different about how Guix works. I think it's a very great feature and a really great design, but it does take some getting used to how this actually matters to you in the day-to-day operation. One last thing I want to tell you is that you may need to run a new terminal instance with a new login shell or log out of your current session and log back in again before any generation change takes effect, because it is changing those folders that you have set up in your profile, and there may be new environment variables or changes to environment variables that need to be applied before everything is going to work perfectly. So sometimes when you do this, you may need to log out and log back in again before everything is totally clean. And that's just the way that it works in the Linux environment. Whenever you have environment variables and you're running a desktop environment, those environment variables can't be applied very easily. You can go into a shell and source your profile, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your desktop environment is going to pick it up. So just for complete safety's sake, always log out and log back into your desktop environment if you're doing any kind of profile manipulations like this. Installing packages is totally fine. That should not be a problem necessarily, but definitely can be a problem for changing different generations. Okay, so the last thing I want to tell you about is how to avoid package compilation. So if you've installed Guix and configured it to download substitutes, which is usually the case, I think it's sort of the default, then the package you install may install precompiled binaries that come from Guix's own build servers. Sometimes the build servers won't have a build for one of the packages that you're installing yet, especially if it's a big package like ungoogled Chromium or Firefox. So if there's a new update to one of these packages, sometimes it may take a day or two before you actually see a pre-built package for that dependency or that package on the Guix build servers. So if you try to install it yourself, it's actually going to try to build it from source, and that could take a really long time. You might want to actually try to avoid that at times. So one way that you can check to see whether those substitutes are available for a given package is to use the Guix weather command. In this case, I'm going to use Guix weather to check the status of ungoogled Chromium, which is the Chromium package in Guix. So I'll type in Guix weather ungoogled-chromium. And what it's going to do is take a look at, ignore some of these errors. Sometimes I see these and I don't know why it happens, but it's never a problem. What it's going to do is look at the build server for Guix and tell me whether substitutes are available for the package that I asked for. And in this case, it says 100% of substitutes are available because I only look for one package. And it tells me how big the files are and how big they are on disk. Don't really care too much about that part, but I do care that it is available. So that means I could install ungoogled Chromium right now and it would just download the pre-built binary and I would not have to compile it myself, which is fantastic because it would take 2 hours otherwise probably. So that's the command that you will definitely want to use for these larger packages. So if you go and start installing a package and it starts compiling and it takes forever, you could probably just cancel the installation and then wait for a couple hours and then use Guix weather to check to see if the substitute is now available, and then you could do it that way. Or you could just let the package build yourself. Either way, you're going to get basically the same result. It's just a matter of whether you can wait that long and have your CPU tied up building something for that long. So if it says 0.0 substitutes available, 0 out of 1, then you definitely might want to try to install that later. So check out the Guix manual for Guix weather to learn more about that. There's probably not much extra information other than what I told you here, but if you're curious, then that information is there. So that is basically all what I wanted to tell you about day-to-day package management. And we did get to learn about the rollback feature, which gives you some power that you don't have in your typical Linux distribution package managers. So hopefully that gives you some motivation to want to try this, because I think it's really cool, and it will save you sometimes whenever you run into trouble. So it definitely has saved me in the past. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you can use Guix channels to install packages that aren't a part of the main Guix package repository, so that you can get software and drivers that aren't allowed there. So like we talked about in the first video in this series, not all software is allowed in the main Guix package repository. No proprietary software or drivers or firmwares are allowed there. So there are other repositories you can use for this, and there's other repositories for other types of software that you might be interested in, like games or just things that are custom use for people, etc. So I'll tell you how you can use those channels or package sources basically to add extra software to your Guix setup. I'm also going to show you how you can use the channel configuration to lock your installed packages and system configuration to a particular version so that it is reproducible across multiple machines. So if, like in this case, on this machine, I was pretty far behind on what packages I had installed, but on other machines, I'm farther ahead. However, if I wanted to make sure that when I pull the latest packages that I keep them at the same commits on every repo, we can do that with the channel configuration. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. And for those of you who are waiting for the video on a full Guix system install, I promise we're going to get to that right after the next video on channels. Channels are important for the Guix installation process, so I just wanted to cover that first, and then we'll be ready to do the full Guix installation video, so keep an eye out for that. Before I go, I just wanted to thank my sponsors. These people have decided to sponsor the content that I'm making about GNU Emacs and GNU Guix, and I'm very thankful to them for their support. It definitely helps to keep me going whenever the times get tough and it's hard to make these videos because it gets super long. Sorry about all that, but I really appreciate their support. If you want to become a sponsor of the channel, definitely check out the links I have below in the description. I'm on both GitHub sponsors and Patreon. You can also do one-time tips via PayPal, and now you can do it via GitHub sponsors. Apparently GitHub sponsors has made a one-time support option. So if you want to do it that way, definitely go check that out. And if you're not interested in supporting the channel in that way, you can really help by leaving a like on this video and sharing the video with other people who might be interested in it. The more people who learn about Guix, the more people will have to talk to about it, and the more the Guix community itself will grow. So it'd be really great for you to share it with other people. So until next time, I hope this was useful for you. Leave a note in the comments if you have any questions, and definitely check the link to the Discord, the System Crafters Discord, in case you want to talk with more people about Guix. We're there all the time just talking about Emacs and Guix and everything else. And yeah, next time we'll be talking about channels, so hopefully we'll see you again then. Until then, thanks a lot for watching, and happy hacking. See ya.